Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Book Bar and welcome to my June mid-month wrap-up. If this is your first time watching a wrap-up of mine, I split my wrap-ups into mid-month and end of month because I read a lot of books and it would just be too much to talk about at the end. So already from the 1st to the 15th of June, I have completed a total of 21 books. Or 21 books, novellas, all that fun stuff. If this is your first time, the way I talk about them is I go from date of completion. So if I started a book on the 1st, but I didn't finish it till the 8th, and I read 5 books in between, I will talk about the 5 books that I read in between before finishing the other. So I will just go ahead and get started. The first book that I read in June to start off the month of Pride was Little Green Vines, which is a sapphic monster romance. It's about a demon and a human, like a plant demon. And Iris, the plant demon, or demoness as she is called, she uses vines in a very interesting way on the other heroine, Poppy. And yeah, very interesting. It's a novella, so there's not really a ton to say plot-wise, because there really isn't much. But I had a great time. I rated it 4 stars. I've read better novellas. I've read worse novellas. So 4 stars, right down, pretty much right in the middle when it comes to usually I won't give a novella less than 3 stars, and I won't give one, and I'll give one 5 stars, but this one 3 or 4, so right in the middle. Then the next book that I finished is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V. Schwab. This book is very interesting. I'm sure you know about it. It's been all over BookTube. This is a very popular book. I do have a vlog coming out next week where I read this book, and I had a great time with it. I gave it 4 stars. It's very different than anything I generally read. It doesn't really have a genre. It's kind of very genre bending. But basically, this girl, Adeline, she sells her soul to Luke, the devil, and basically she'll live forever, but nobody can ever remember her. So she'll go to do something and someone will instantly, as soon as they walk away from her, they forget her completely. So she has to really learn how to survive until one day she walks into a bookshop in New York City and meets a boy named Henry, and he remembers her. And it changes everything. And the ending was beautiful. Had I not been at work, I probably would have cried. But yeah, I gave this 4 stars. I had a great time. Then the next book that I finished was Crimes of Passion by Jack Harvin. This is another novella, but this one's a male novella. And it's written by a man. So that's great. Great representation there. I had a great time with it. It's 2 rival true crime podcasters, Emery and Calvin. Emery is more he's fun, he has green hair, he makes a lot of jokes at the expense of the serial killer or murderer. Doesn't have to be serial killer, but the person that committed the crime. And Calvin is very much stern, wants nothing to do with making fun of anyone. He thinks that he doesn't like Emery because Emery does that, and Emery's no, I'm not making fun of the victims, I'm making fun of, or the victims' families, I'm making fun of the killer. And so I did enjoy that conversation. I don't do true crime. I'm not a fan of it. I don't like scary things, and true crime, especially living alone, hits a lot closer to home than you would think. So I'm not a big fan of it, so I don't really understand the nuances of it, but I had a great time listening to this novella, and I gave it 5 stars. Then the next book that I finished this month was Devil in Disguise by Lisa Kleypas. I have a whole Ravenel's review where I talk about this book. I will link it above. But this is the 7th book in the Ravenel series. It's not really a Ravenel's book. It's more of a Wallflower 2nd generation book. But basically, Lady Merritt Sterling, who happens to be Lillian and Marcus from It Happened One Autumn, it's their oldest daughter. She was actually born in Scandal in Spring, I think it's Scandal in Spring. She's born. But it's their daughter, who's a widower, and she now runs her husband's company. shipping company, and Kieran McRae is a Scottish whiskey creator. Let's give Cleopas his first Scottish hero. Kieran McRae shows up because there was an issue with his whiskey delivery shipment, and they end up having lots of sparks fly. There's amnesia. There's all sorts of craziness. You see a lot of Sebastian, and you see a little bit of Evie and Lillian and Marcus, and it's very much like a fan servicey callback, and I loved it. I'm pretty sure I gave it 5 stars. Where's my, yeah, 5 stars. Then the next book that I read completed was Inked in Lies by Gianna Darling. This is the 5th book in the Fallen Men series, Fallen Men Motorcycle Club series. I still don't know if I don't think this one topped Good Gone Bad in my opinion. This is a lot of people's favorite, and I get it. Leela and Nova's story was really fun. It was cute. Of course, it's an age gap. And they're kind of, like, it's a little taboo because they're kind of step siblings. Basically, something happens dramatically in Leela's past, and she ends up going to live with Nova's family. They like adopt her, basically. And it was a beautiful story. I had a great time. I loved it. Nova really didn't want to fall for Leela, but everyone knew, like, that they were going to end up together, even when they were young, even when Leela was pretty young. There's no grooming or anything, because Nova had he did not think of her that way until, like, it became really obvious that she was into him, and he, like, he did something to kind of push her away. And now it's a couple years later, and they, like, don't have they were really, really close, and they don't have the relationship that they used to have anymore. And Nova's like, but I really want her. And he kind of orchestrates something happening with her fiance. She is engaged, but there is no cheating. If you know, you know. I don't want to give anything away. But it was great. I gave it 5 stars. I cried so many times at the beginning of this book when all of the stuff was happening in Leela's childhood. All of her traumas and everything. And yeah, it was great. It had me crying. Had a great time. It's book 5, so you don't have to read them in order, but I would read them in order. It's definitely been more enjoyable knowing, because you see the other couples, and there's things that happen in the plot of the other books that are important to this book too. Then I'm just going to talk about the next 4 all together. I binged the 4 volumes of Heartstopper that are out. It's a fun, if you don't know what Heartstopper is, it is a graphic novel series by Alice Oseman about Nick and Charlie, and they're 2 teenage boys who are really good friends, and they end up falling in love, and it's a warm hug. It's a fun series. I'm really glad I read it, and I'm excited to watch the show. But yeah, I had a great time. It was fantastic. 5 stars for all 4 volumes. But I read them all, like, just binged them all back to back to back in, like, one evening. I had just finished Inked in Lies, and I was like, I don't really want to start anything else, and I wanted something fun and easy. I will say volume 4 has a lot of, like, hard-hitting topics. There's a lot of talk of, like, eating disorders and depression and things like that. So it is a lot more of it's a heavier book, but it's still just a fun, it's a warm hug. It really is. I love it. Great. Like I said, all 4 volumes, 5 stars. Then the next book that I read is I Must Betray You by Ruta Septis. This is a historical fiction story that I read for that same vlog that's coming out next week. And it is about a boy named Cristian in 1989 in Romania, right before the Romanian Revolution, and he is caught with something and ends up having to become, like, an informant for the Romanian communist government, and it's all about, like, overthrowing that and, like, them getting their independence, and, like, who can you trust, who can't you trust. And when I tell you that this book, like, it is, I can't put into words how good this book was, because it was just, like, I mean, you see a lot of historical fiction that's about World War I, World War II. Like, those are everywhere. Those are very common time periods to do and common wars. And this one, it just felt like, I don't know. It's crazy. I really enjoyed it. I had a great time. It's so crazy to think that 1989 is historical fiction. But here we are. But yeah, I definitely, like, of any book that I recommend, like, this is one that I would definitely suggest picking up. It was fantastic. 5 stars. And this is not something that I usually would read because it's a young adult. And there's not a romance. There's no romance in it. Whereas, because a lot of historical fictions will have romance in them, especially like the World War I, World War II. So, and I generally read adult historical fictions, but this one was a YA, and had I not read this for this vlog, I probably never would have picked it up, but I had a great time, and 5 stars, and I definitely think everyone should read it. Then the next book that I read was Managed by Kristen Callahan. This is actually the second book in a series, again, read for that same vlog that's coming out next week, so keep your eyes out for it. This is a like workplace romance about Gabriel and Sophie, and they meet on a plane, and Gabriel's supposed to have the seat to himself. Like, he bought 2 seats next to each other, and ends up the plane was over full, and Sophie ended up getting bumped to first class and sits next to him. And he turns out that he has really bad anxiety when it comes to flying, so she helps him through it while they're on the plane. And then turns out that she's actually going to interview for the band that he works for, to be like PR, do PR for them, photos, things like that. And they just can't deny their attraction to each other. But this was fantastic. I gave it 4.5 stars. The end, the miscommunication at the end of overhearing someone say something that wasn't about you just really bothers me, because it's like, you could have had this conversation, instead you chose to listen to their conversation with someone else, and it wasn't even about you. And instead of asking them like an adult, you just run away. So that bothered me, but I still gave it 4.5 stars. I had a great time. Then, probably the worst book that I read this year, but I'm still trash, and I probably will continue, is His Hollow Heart by Rachel Lee. I hate that shiny. But this is a kind of Beauty and the Beast-ish retelling. Callum and Bella are orphans, and they live in a foster home together, and they are about to be adopted together. They made a pact that they were never going to be apart. They were going to be together forever. And the day, this all happens in the prologue, the day that they're supposed to get adopted, like they're supposed to meet the family, Callum gets in a lot of trouble and ends up not being able to meet them. And Bella decides to be selfish and be adopted without Callum. And now it's 11 years later, I think. And Callum is, it's 12 years later. 12 years later. Callum has found Bella again, and he basically hires her under false pretenses to come live in his like crazy estate on an island. He hires her to come there, and he's not going to let her go. And basically there is triggers, content warnings for SA. He definitely assaults her without her consent, and it's very, very dubcon their first time that they have sex. And for how like dark this book was, and like how much they talked about having sex, there really wasn't much sex in it. But the first, like, and the way why I say it's dubcon, not non-con, borders on the line of non-con, is we are in her head when the sex scene is happening. And so she's not saying like, oh, I don't want him to do this, which I appreciate more than like if we're in his head and she's, because I don't want to, but basically this book was 2.5 stars. And I will continue the series because I'm trash. But just know there are a ton of content warnings. Basically, all the things you can think of, and they're not listed in this. But he definitely assaults her. He fingers her without her saying yes. And I vaguely remember her kind of trying to push him away. So do know that going in. There is assault, and I don't think he makes up for it, and she just kind of rolls over and dies and decides that she's gonna be with him. Sorry if that spoils it for you, but it is what it is. I definitely do not recommend this book, and like I said, I'm trash, and I will read the second book in the duet, because yes, I am trash. But I do this. I mean, it's beautiful, and I am actually going to an author signing. So if I do end up liking the second part more, if he ends up redeeming himself in the second part of the duet, I might buy it and have the author sign that one, because I obviously have this one signed. If I don't like it, I mean, it's on KU, so this book is on KU too. But the second book's on KU, so I'm gonna read it on there. And if I end up liking it, like if he redeems himself, like he's got a lot of redeeming to do. And I just, the way that the female character is, I don't think he'll redeem himself, but we'll see. But yeah, we're gonna move on from my rant to the next book that I finished, which is Love is a Rogue by Lenora Bell. Again, read it for a vlog coming out next week. Had a great time with this. This is Stanford Wright or Ford and Beatrice Bentley, and which I just realized her last name's Bentley, his first name's Ford. Okay. So basically she is the sister of a duke, and her mom really wants her to marry someone in the town and someone of like with a lot of money. And Ford is actually a carpenter and a Navy man, not part of the aristocracy. And they meet each other they have an adorable meet cute. They meet each other in Cornwall or something like that, and where he's working on a house and she's like staring out at him, and she drops her glasses like on or around him, and he like climbs up the turret to get them to her, and it's so cute. It's so cute. Her mom is awful, wants her to be part of the ton, and she's aristocracy, and Beatrice just wants to be a spinster and write her etymology dictionary. Like, she does not care what people think. She has palsy, so like her side of her face is, she like can't smile, because the side of her face doesn't work properly. And so I'm not going to get into that because I don't know how to explain it, and I don't want to say something that is like, I can't think of the word, not cruel, but incorrect. And but yeah, Ford thinks she's beautiful and just wants her to think she's beautiful, and he does, and he helps her with her confidence, and he helps her with she inherits a bookshop, and he helps her like change it into a workplace clubhouse for her ladies who they like call themselves the knitting club, but really they're all women who are like want to do more. Like one wants to make wine, one wants to get her law degree, one wants to like be a doctor or something. I don't fully remember what the other one wants to do, but that one definitely wants to be a lawyer, and one definitely wants to be a winemaker. And I think the winemaker's the second book in the series, but that's not this book. But I had a great time. I gave this 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. And it's like a low angst historical romance, which is always great. Then I read Marriage for One by Ella Mays. This is Jack and Rose, and yes, I know it's the name of the Titanic. It's actually mentioned in the book. This is a marriage of convenience, mutual pining, friends-ish to lovers, grumpy sunshine, caretaking, basically, slow burn, basically all of the tropes that I love minus age gap. But it was so beautiful. The pining from the two of them, and like them wanting to be together, but like, so basically they get married because Rose was going to basically rent a coffee shop from her uncle, but her uncle ended up dying, and in his will he had given her the coffee shop, but he'd actually given it to her husband. At the time she was engaged. Well, her fiance at the time breaks off the engagement like right around when her uncle dies. And so Rose gave up on her dream, and like she's like, well, I guess I'm not gonna have my coffee shop. Well, Jack's one of the family lawyers, and he suggests that they get married, and so they do. They enter into marriage of convenience, so he will then own the property that she's renting, and he's like, oh, we'll do this for 2 years and then we can get a divorce. So he doesn't want to get close to her because he thinks like it's better for her if I don't. And she doesn't want to get close to him because she's like, well, it's only gonna be 2 years. But they can't deny their attraction, and it was just beautiful. The caretaking in this, I absolutely loved this. 5 stars. Then the next book that I read was Lifeblood by Amara Ray. This is a fantasy romance, fated mates, enemies to lovers, captor captive. Again, great tropes, great, all like buzzwords for me. Also, I read this, you guessed it, for a vlog. Oh, same with Marriage for One. Read for a vlog. But this is Makai or Mackie, I don't really know how you say it, and Colette. And Colette is a witch and Makai is a warlock, and they do not like each other, witches and warlocks. Makai's kind of a loner. Like he doesn't have a clan or a tribe or anything. He goes and tries out different clans, but he has a very specific vision of what he wants the clan he joins to be like. And he thinks he's found one with this guy named Thomas. Well, Thomas then convinces him that he needs to get this lifeblood witch by the name of Colette, or a life witch is what she is. And so they capture her, and Makai has to kind of torture her, but they learn they're actually fated mates. And Makai's like torturing her and doing all these things, and he starts to realize like every time he hurts her, it actually hurts him. And he's like, the couple times says infernal mating bond. And it was great. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4.5 stars. I would definitely suggest. And this was a debut. Like this was the author's first book, and I've only heard that they get better. Then the next book that I read was Kink Camp Hunted by A. Anders, or Adriana Anders, I think. This is like novella-ish, short novella length, primal play, fun, BDSM-ish, Grumpy Sunshine, starving artists, but not really starving. Basically, Grace goes to this camp with her best friend Max, who goes every year to a camp called Kink Camp. And Grace sees the sign, and it says, "One night only, I chase you, I do you." Great. And Grace is like, "Oh, I'm interested in that." And she goes and ends up deciding that she wants to do it again. And the hero, Lev, L-I-E-V, he has a lot of trauma in his past, and he doesn't want to get close to anyone. And he's like, isn't gonna go the second night. And then he's like, you know what, I don't want anyone else to do it, so I'm gonna go. So he goes and captures her again, and then, you know, they end up capturing each other's hearts once they realize who they are. Yeah, it was a great time. It's a quick read. I read it all in one day at the pool. So 4.5 stars. Also read for a vlog. You can't tell I was trying to finish this vlog. Then the next book that I read was Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake. Another Pride Month read. Not that you should only read sapphic or queer stories during Pride Month, but I did want to read this one because there's a couple book clubs that are doing this book, and I've heard really great things. Everyone that's read it has loved it. People said that it was really spicy and like steamy for a traditionally published book. I didn't really think it was all that steamy. I read steamier. But this is Claire and Delilah, and it's like a best friend's sister, or sister's best friend, sorry. And Delilah is a photographer living in New York, and she gets a call from her sister Astrid saying, "You're coming for my wedding." Right? Like she's supposed to be the photographer for her sister's wedding. And then there's Claire, who's a single mom, bisexual. And Delilah's always kind of had a crush on Claire. And Claire and Astrid and I think their other friend Iris were kind of mean to Delilah growing up. And so Delilah doesn't really like them, but she's always kind of had a crush on Claire. And when she goes back to Bright Falls for this wedding, they end up connecting. And I felt like the middle, like for how long the book was, it's like a 400-page book. I felt like nothing happened. So, I mean, I had a great time. I still gave it 4.5 stars. Like, it's still a really good book, but I felt like it just kind of, like, had I not been listening to it on audio, I probably would have, like, zoned out halfway through. Like, there was times that I zoned out. Like, it probably would take me a whole lot longer to read it. But I had a great time. It was a good romance. And I'm excited for, like, the future books. Then the next book that I finished was Fair Catch by Candy Steiner. Again, read for a vlog. This is Zeke and Riley. I can talk. Zeke and Riley. They both play football on the NBU football team. Riley made a pinky promise with her twin brother when she was in high school. He was in an accident, and Zeke is the cause of that accident. And so she promised her brother that she would play football, and she makes the team in college, and they go, and she ends up having to room with Zeke, and she hates Zeke because of what happened in their past with her brother, and with her brother, not their brother. They are not related at all. So, yeah. So this is friends to enemies to lovers, brother's best friend, teammates, roommates, forced proximity, all of that. This book was going to be a 4.5. Well, it was going to be a 5, and then the end would have made it a 4.5 because I have a very specific thing that I like at the end of books, and it didn't do this. But it was going to be a 4.5, 5-star book. But they are freshmen in college. It very clearly says that they are freshmen. Well, during the third act conflict, when they're not together, Zeke talks about dropping out of school to enter the NFL draft. If you know anything about college football going into being a pro, you cannot do that as a freshman. It is not possible. You have to have been in school for 3 years. You have to have had like 3 years of eligibility, I believe. That might be wrong. But basically, for him to be a freshman, he cannot do it. Like, even as a redshirt freshman, you can't drop out after. So he cannot do this. So that just completely took me out of the story. It bothered me to no end having that in there. And I'm sure for 99% of you, that will not bother you at all. And for most people, it would not bother them at all. But for me, like, knowing, and I mean, it's really like a quick, like, Google search to figure it out. Like, you cannot enter the NFL draft as a freshman. So yeah, that brought this book down to 3 stars. But it's a great book. I definitely, if facts like that don't bother you, please read it, because it was really good. I did really enjoy it. But that just, like, it's not a book that I will recommend because that bothered me so much. Yeah, 3 stars. Had a great time. And it was, like, if that's not going to bother you, like I said, please read it. It was great. But that bothers me to no end. Then the next book that I finished, I didn't rate this. I had started this before all of the James Patterson things came out. I read Run, Rose, Run by Dolly Parton and James Patterson. I didn't read it for him. I read it for her because I'm obsessed with Dolly Parton. But I will not be reading it. I will not be talking about it. If you want to know more about what happened, go ahead and Google it. But not going to talk about it. If you want to know my thoughts on it, you can message me privately and I will tell you, but I am not going to discuss it anymore on my channel. Then the next book that I finished was a little closer to home, How I Found the Calm After the Storm by Ginger Zee. This is Ginger Zee's second memoir. I love Ginger Zee. I love ABC News. And Ginger Zee's the chief meteorologist. It's very much, there's a lot of, like, heavy topics. She talks about suicide attempts, abortions, depression, anxiety. She talks about all of it, abuse, domestic abuse, like all of the things. Like, she goes through it and talks about it in her book. And I had a great time. That's not a way to say it. I enjoyed this memoir. It was heartbreaking and hopeful all at the same time. That's what I said. But I gave it 5 stars. If I'm not going to give a memoir more 5 stars, I'm just not going to rate it. But this one was 5 stars. But do know it's not a light it's not like Will by Will Smith, where it's more fun and there's a lot of fun songs and things like that. Like, this is heavy. It is a heavy, heavy romance. I cannot speak today. It is a heavy, heavy book. But yeah, I don't know that I would suggest it for anyone going through, but it is, like I said, it's hopeful and heartbreaking at the same time. And then the last book that I finished in the first half of the month was Nevermore, The Trials of Morgan Crow by Jessica Townsend. I read this for my niece. And so my plan is I wrote her a little note in the front. I know you're here for talking about books. I wrote her a little note in the book in the front. And then like every chapter I asked her questions, like get her thinking. And I think it's, you know, I wish I would have known how to annotate when I was in like high school and college. I think it would have made me enjoy reading those type of books a lot more, you know, I think I would have enjoyed that and I would have done better had I known how to do it. So I'm going to try to kind of teach her how to annotate. So each tab, I'm going to give her her own set of tabs. And so like all of my tabs say my name, but so hers are going to be different because the tabs that I have are all different shapes. And I'm going to tell her to try to use a different color for like if she wants to do like something that she thinks is going to be important. I want her to use a different color than the one that I used. But I had a great time. And then hopefully what she'll do is at the end, there's like a whole blank page at the back that I asked her to write me her own letter. And I am going to then keep it and I'm gonna put $8 inside of it because she's 8. And when she graduates high school, hopefully we'll do this every year, but I'm going to then give her the book and each book will have the dollar amount of the age that she was that year. So by the end, she'll have a good, 8. She'll graduate when she's 18 or 17, something like that. So she'll have a good chunk. It's going to be a lot of money and I'm sure I'll end up putting more. And we might end up doing this more times a year, but for now, that's what we're doing. This was the first time I've done this and I'll see if she even wants to continue to do it. I hope she does because I had a great time. But talk about the book. Nevermore is about a girl named Morgan Crow, and she is a cursed child, cursed to die on her 11th birthday. 12th birthday? 11th birthday. And she ends up being like saved by this man named Jupiter North, who whisks her away to Nevermore, where he tells her that he wants her to join the Wonder Society. And I think is what it is. And yeah, she ends up going through all these trials, and they have to learn about, like, Morgan learns a lot about herself. And yeah, I had a great time with this. I gave it 5 stars. It is a fantastic middle grade. It's an older middle grade, so my niece, she's reading at like a 9th grade reading level, so already, and so I think she'll be able to handle it. But it is an older middle grade, so it's probably better for like 10, 11-year-olds than it is for like 5, 6, 7. But I am going to give this to her. I think also part of it is I want to challenge her, especially during the summer, and maybe I'll find like a younger middle grade for her to read in like the winter time. But I want to challenge her during the summer, and so this is a book that we're doing. I love the tabs. I'm sorry, I'm crazy. But yeah, I gave this 5 stars. I had a great time, and if you have a child in your life, this is definitely a book that I think this series could be compared to that series that nobody wants to talk about anymore. And it's a female, bad A heroine, and she's awesome, and yeah, I loved it. So yeah, those are the 21 books that I read this month, the first half of this month. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these. Let me know if you plan on picking any of them up. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. It really helps me. And I'll talk to you all in the next one. Bye!